Hello everyone, I'm Lydia Ruth. Welcome to the Manse and to the homemaking episode here. It's just after New Year's Day and I have decided that I can't make a year-long resolution, so I just make an hour-by-hour resolution because a long resolution, New Year's resolution, would halfway through the year I'd see that I wasn't going to make it and I'd get discouraged. So now I have a master list of all the things that need to be done or that I'd like to do. And so each hour I will just look at one of those things and decide whether I want to attempt it or not. So much happier. And so ladies, I would like you to click the link in the description box if you're viewing this on YouTube, because it will take you to the post on which I have embedded this, and you can see the things that go with it if I mentioned a link, or if I mentioned something that I read from the web, or if I recommended a book, or pictures from around the Manse. And I'm so happy you're back and that you've been patient with me. Did you think I wasn't coming? And so I have all these excuses, but I won't give you any because I don't want to make you sick. So ladies, I want to start out like I always do. And that is with how important it is. I don't care if you're living in a hot climate or a cold climate, you're going to have these overcast, dull days that just kind of feel kind of icky and eerie. And if you don't fix yourself up, if you don't do your hair and your clothing and your bath and your face and your exercises, you're only adding to the dull atmosphere. And you know, you ever read in the scripture where Jesus said you are the light of the world? Well, of course, I love figures of speech, and that was one of them. It was using the word light in a different way, using Christ often used words we were familiar with and concepts we were familiar with, like light, to show that it also has a spiritual aspect to it. And to be the light of the world is also a way of encouraging other people, and it shows respect for them when you dress up for them. And I would like to read something that I wrote on, I don't know if any of you are on anything where I'll put this on my blog so you can read it, something that I wrote to the politicians. Everyone's just thrilled, you know, because their people won, but I got to looking at the women in Congress and feeling so sad, and I want to read this to you, and it's not considered being harsh or anything. I just really want to encourage them. So here's what I said. And I had been listening to a female politician, and she had really good conservative things to say, but very few of the female politicians really talk about the family and the home and really talk about the real concerns that we have. And they'll talk about, you know, political things and claim to be conservative, but one of the aspects I knew of while I'm talking about clothing and about the appearance and how important that is to make a dull day brighter. And what is it that one of the poets said? There's no greater function in life than to spread joy around. And so I want to read this to you, and I hope that in your current circumstances, whatever it is, if I am doing this for some of the ladies I know that have asked me to make some broadcasts so they'll have something to listen to while they recover from something, or they're in bed, or they are at home from something that they had to, some kind of surgery or something like that. And so I know several of these women, so I want to make a nice broadcast for you. And when we were sick, you know, my mother had us go take a bath if we were able to, and then while we were in there, she would put on clean sheets and a pillowcase and everything, and lay out clean clothing to wear. And sometimes we actually were a little more dressed up when we were recovering. And it just helps so much. It helps the mind and the body. And I will probably be talking quite a bit about that today, if you can stand it. And I'll read to you some poetry because we are poetry deficient. And I'll have to read some of this to you. Okay, here's what I wrote, and I will put this on the post and I encourage you to read it. I encourage all conservative female politicians in the Congress and in the public eye anywhere to show less bare skin and wear more business attire designed with dignity and with less attraction to things besides their cognitive abilities. You know how the feminists were big on, oh, I want people to admire me for my mind and not my body. Well, here are all these so-called conservative women in our, state politics and the government and everything, and some of the stuff they're wearing. Just let me continue to show less bare skin and more business attire designed with dignity and with less attraction to things besides their cognitive abilities. Why is it that the Democrat women tend to wear modest suits and seem to look more serious in their clothing? I implore you all to be a better example and influence in your appearance. This is just my observation and opinion. Conservatives claim to be more in line with religious values, and it would seem to follow that they are more conservative in appearance. We would be all be in an uproar if the men showed up in Congress in sleeveless clothes not buttoned to their necks or short pants. The men know how to properly cover themselves. Women in politics have the money to do much better in their attire. Of course, I pray our president's wife and female family members will also consider this. It isn't necessary to be stuck in the 1960s cultural revolution with the mini this and the mini that and the barest essentials. There are good clothes still available that are appropriate for our times. Ladies, when you consider buying a dress, make sure to buy the whole dress, not one with the holes in it or missing parts. This sounds incredible to people who have grown up trying to look sexy instead of serious, but serious can be very attractive. A clever designer could tap into this field of female dignity and respect and could be at the head of a great movement. Yes, make America great again, but make America modest too. And so, ladies, I wanted to discuss this a little bit because there seems to be, I need to have a class for these girls into Congress. And I'm sure there are rules of what you can wear, but they need to understand that we have a right to bear arms. Is that the Second Amendment? We have a right to bear arms doesn't mean bear arms as in, evening dresses with no sleeves. And so I wanted to discuss that a little bit with you. I know you think that's silly, but we'll all be in better mental health too if we cover ourselves. And the trouble with tattoos, here's the trouble with tattoos, is now she's got a tattoo here and a tattoo here and one back here, so now she has to wear bare clothing to show off the tattoos. So cover yourself, and if you're bored with your clothing, just buy a floral dress, or if you'll notice that tattoos are all these designs and things like that, just buy clothing because you can change it, wash it, start over again, and it's more versatile. Once you get something on your skin, you can't remove it, and if you get some kind of conviction that you shouldn't have done it, don't ever do anything permanent to yourself like that. And so, keep yourself free from that. And also, a lot of stress and cortisol comes from not dressing as well as you can, not feeling good about how you look. And when you get used to clothing on your arms and on your legs, at first it feels kind of uncomfortable. If you're used to bare dressing and you start pulling your sleeves up, or you start pulling your hem up, to your knees because you can't get used to it. But after a while, you'll get used to it, and it will feel more comfortable to be covered than to be uncovered. Now, I want to make sure that you understand that it also shows a respect for other people. It shows respect for the public. It's also an influence. Our dress is an influence. I want us to think about that, okay? And for the home, for we ladies at home, I think it's important to dress as though we are in better condition than the people out there at their jobs. We don't have to go around looking like we're not happy, and we can dress happily. And it's also a great example to the girls at home. And girls, when we were growing up, we would say, and the boys would say, the boys would say, when I grow up, I want to be like my dad. And the girls would say, when I grow up, well, I want to be like my mom. And but now, do they do that anymore? No. They'll say, well, I'm not like my mom. I'm not really a homebody, and I don't really like this and that. I don't really like creating food, preparing food or anything. But in many ways, I think that that's not quite true. Because I think if you look to do things and to learn at the elbow of your mother, you're going to want to be a homebody. And I want you to consider something that I have been talking about recently about girls staying home. And mothers have to have a good attitude if they want their daughters to stay home. They have to be happy, and they have to create a home that's nice to look at, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on that. And they have to just be happy and to, in a way, treat the home like it's your very own playhouse. If you want to shift things around a little bit and play around with things, you can. And the question you have to ask is, does this edify? Edify means to build up and to improve the mind. Whenever you're in a dull situation, or you go somewhere where it's very dull and people aren't taken care of, whatever, it pulls you down, doesn't it? It just makes your heart sink. And if you've ever walked into a house that you had to live in, like many preachers' wives have done this, walked into a house that they were going to have to live in, and their heart would just sink. They would sit down and cry. And I read about one preacher's wife. She had written a book about all the places that they had gone. She said she finally got so tired of having to fix up every rundown place they had moved to. But so the homemaking has to be presented in a way that's joyful and that's purposeful, and that is, in a way, just this privilege of serving others at home. And sometimes people will complain that at home, they're standing up in the kitchen a lot, they're washing dishes, and they're preparing food, and then they're doing the laundry, and they start saying, well, I don't want to be stuck in the kitchen all the time. But then they'll get a job where they're stuck at a cafeteria working, or they're stuck on their feet all the time in an institution that just requires them to be on their feet. And that can't be good, especially for young girls whose bones are still forming and whose bodies are not and minds are not quite fully formed. Is probably not a good idea. I don't think it is. So you might need to ask questions of yourself if you think that you should go out to work and leave your mother and siblings at home while you go out to get educated or work, as to how much closer will this get you to being a homemaker, to being a married woman with children and a homemaker? How much closer is it going to get you? And I knew a girl who, when she was very young, she wanted to be like her mother. And she'd been homeschooled, and she was observing. She's really good at observing all her, friends, neighbors, and everything. And she watched these girls go to school and go to college and never, ever get married. And she noticed that many of the educated girls weren't any closer to getting married, but they had salaries and they had big money. And so the men were attracted to that, but not enough to marry them. Or if they did marry them, they were very upset if the girls decided not to work anymore. So you've got to really be careful what you do, that someone will like you because you're making money or because you're educated. That's not a good idea. And I wanted to say that this girl began to observe everything, what these young people were doing, and they were not getting anywhere in life. And so she had looked after her grandmother. I guess she had two grandmothers she had looked after, and of course they had made sure she had a little money for it and paid her, and she saved it. And there was no man in sight, and there was no marriage in sight, no houses. She said, well, I'm just going to start buying my things for my home. She bought the best cookware, absolute top-of-the-line stuff. She bought the best furniture, stored it all up in her mother's attic. She bought everything for a home. And people, of course, would ridicule her. Why are you doing all that? Why don't you wait till you get married? But when she did get married, she had everything, so her husband and her didn't have to buy it, and they were able to put their money on a house. And so, but you know, she had faith. She believed that what she was doing was right, and it turned out very well for her. Now, I wanted to make sure that I did cover this thing about the appearance, your appearance at home, because it'll set the stage for everything. For example, if you have someone who's sick at home, or you've gotten bad news, if someone's just dealt you a terrible spiritual blow or emotional blow, your appearance will make it less likely that you look deranged. Because naturally, we're going to be upset, concerned, grieved, but it looks worse if you have not taken care of yourself, and you don't want someone to say, well, she just looks disturbed. You want to be careful about that, okay? And don't have a meltdown. Why should you? You have a life to live. So build up your body and mind with your appearance. This is so important. I know I go on and on and on about it, but sometimes when you don't have the, wake up on a dull day and you think, where do I start? That appearance preparation is such a good start. It is something you can control, something you can do. You might look in on a room that needs to be straightened up and, oh, just feel so overwhelmed. But you can take care of your appearance. Also, I think it's really important that you do some physical therapy for yourself. I don't like to call it exercise. These days I have found a couple of people on YouTube that just insist that you don't need to do any strenuous exercise, just one or two what they call moves. And it could be just something as simple as shaking your hands or holding your arms in the air or stretching. And don't let anybody tell you that if you have a physical flaw and you've gotten overweight and you don't have a waistline, or you can't walk very well, that it can't be corrected. And this is the popular thing now, is to tell someone, some of these so-called professionals will tell someone, well, it can't be fixed. But that's not true, because with some of these physical therapy type of exercises, things can be fixed. I've seen people recover from many different things. Now, when you build up your body and your mind with good things, that's why we have Philippians 4:8, isn't it? To consider things that are good and lovely. Do something lovely for yourself. When you build up your body and your mind, then these things that come at you, the news you dread, the different things people do that are disappointing, they don't tend to knock you over as bad when you have been built up by taking care of yourself, having respect for yourself, doing some physical therapy, reading something good, and read aloud as something, okay? Read and have good nutrition. I want to talk to you about tea today, and I will also leave you with a link to a lady who does herbs from her home. She does she may have been a homeschooler, but I wanted to talk to you about ingredients lists. Choose the food that has the lower amount of ingredients listed. Now, I prefer food that have no ingredients listed. This is a red pear, and there are no ingredients listed except pear. And this is an orange. Now, if you can't eat these, there are other things that have the least ingredients. And so I just want to encourage you to do that. And so let's see, what was I going to do? I was going to read you a couple of poems and have you, if you got something to do, go and do it. I will have some things to show you, but I'm barely going to talk. Oh yes, my teacup. This one here, I'm going more to these, and I really like the ones that have a little bit of a pedestal on the bottom, because you don't need a saucer. And of course, if this is laid down on something, it's a little too hot. But I wanted to share this with you. One of those stitch call china that is so prevalent around here at all the reject discount stores, and so I will also explain what I drink out of it pretty soon. And I'm going to read a poem to you, or as we say, as they said in the South, poem. They call them poems. So, and I may have read this to you before, but I want to read it to you because it's about living the slow life and the simple life and how important that is. You know, from the time we're little, we're scooted into schools and places where someone's retraining our brain and making us think about their subject and getting us all hyped up over accomplishing something and doing something, and they teach us a different definition of greatness than the scriptures do. Whereas a mother at home is great, and having babies is great, and being a child at home is greatness. And I always tell my grandchildren, who are very talented, you know, they're busy doing all kinds of things, and they like to, you know, be praised for all that. But I said, if you couldn't do any of it, if you couldn't draw, if you couldn't write, if you couldn't sing, if you couldn't play the fiddle, if you couldn't fly an airplane, yeah, there's one of them flying an airplane. If you couldn't do all that, I would love you just because you exist, just because God brought you into the world. What a wonderful gift. And so a lot of us don't feel that we're important just because we're here. And you've got the great elites of the world who tell us we're just taking up space, you know, and breathing the air and that sort of thing. But everyone is here for a purpose, even if it is just because you're here. And I want to read this. I've been reading out of Edgar A. Guest's poetry book because it's the one I have most handy and I can't find anything else. My bookshelf is such a mess, and I was tempted to put it on my New Year's resolution, but I put it on my master list, and I will do it in one of my hour resolutions and just see, well, if I feel like doing that one today. Okay? And also, I don't believe in New Year's because I think the calendar was changed, and I really think New Year's makes more sense starting in the spring. And also, I think every day is the beginning of a new year. So that makes sense to me. So this is called Just Folks. I may have read this to you before, but I want you to listen to the plainness of it. If you want to see something that's really plain and but very interesting, it was the movie called The Magic of Ordinary Days, one of those older Hallmark movies. And it was about a girl who had a great education in archaeology. And she was from California, and she went to marry a man who was a lonely farmer in another state. And it was filmed in Calgary, Alberta, actually. But the place that she was supposed to go was this lonely farmer's, and I just loved the house, and I liked the inside of the house. Of course, every time I watch it, I see something different, and I liked her hat, and I liked her dress, and it was supposedly done in the 1940s. And she was quite proud of her education. So when she sat at the table with all of her husband's relatives, she found it quite, I guess, she felt let down because they weren't talking about these intellectual things she was used to, educational things. And they were talking about their farms and how good the beans tasted this year, or how much, you know, you got for that, and their food on the table. They were talking about everything they did, and towards the end of the story, she began to see how important this was and how greatness is in these little things, and how importance is in these little things. So I just want to read this little thing for you at home, because you might not think that picking up something or folding something or washing something or tidying up your house is important, and you feel like you're not doing, you know, your ultimate best in life or reaching your full potential. And you learn, just like this woman learned, what was really important in life. And I find that if you could wake up in the morning, remind yourself to be grateful. If you flip on a light, be grateful. that it turned on. I mean, since we've had plumbing problems, I've been so grateful for hot water, running water, and so grateful also for just everything, that I can walk out the door and we haven't had much sun lately, but every now and then a little ray will peek through, so I'll go out there to look at it, and there are a lot of puddles around, and I started doing something that I used to do as a child. I thought, why did we get shamed out of all the lovely, innocent things we used to do? Because we were told we had to grow up. And they even use scriptures that say, when I was a child, I spake as a child and all that. And they even use that to prevent us from really enjoying the little things of life we learned as children. So I went out to one of the puddles, and I have a pair of rubber boots, and I walked in it, and I leaned over and looked in it, and I like seeing the reflections of all the house. I have my own Pemberley, in the puddle, and reflecting in the puddle. I've done a post on that a time or two, and picked up a leaf and floated that a little bit in the puddle, and what is it? Is it a waste of time? It really did something good for my nerves and for my brain, and I'm the queen of cortisol and the queen of what's that other drug? What's that other drug that more of us are willingly pile on ourselves, and from just anxiety, And I tell you what, that was just one of the best little medicines. If I had you here and we were going to do home therapy and try to balance our brains a little bit and be happy, that would be one thing we would have to do. And I would have a little speaker, and I'd say, 9 o'clock in the morning, we will meet at the mud puddle in the front of the house. Bring your this or that, whatever you want, and it would sound like you were in some kind of a rehabilitation center. But that was just one of the neatest experiences. And if I had a little program or a notebook or something, I'd have you all check off that that you had been out and looked in the mud puddle and walked around in it. Or if it was raining, that you bought a special umbrella that matched your outfit, to wear outside and listen to the rain on purpose on that umbrella, and other things like that we've been kind of shamed out of because everybody says, oh, you want your kids to grow up. We should not be so anxious and push our children into growing up, but these childhood things are the things that are going to be able to fall back on, and the things that are going to balance us when life hits us hard. And so I'm going to read this poem to you at last. Here you go. If you've got something to do, I hope you'll start sorting out a box of old fabric or old books or old papers, or go through a kitchen drawer. That's on my master list, those kitchen drawers. I would not want to leave that to anybody. We're strange folks here. We talk about the weather, the good times we have had together. The good times near, the roses budding and the bees, once more upon their nectar sprees, the scarlet fever scare, and who came mighty near not pulling through, and who had light attacks and all, the things that interest, big or small. But here you'll never hear of sinning or any scandal that's beginning. We've got too many other labors to scatter tales that harm our neighbors. We're strange folks here. We're trying to be cheerful and keep this home from getting tearful. We hold it dear, too dear for pettiness and meanness, and nasty tales of men's uncleanness. Here you shall come to joyous smiling, secure from hate and harsh reviling. Here, where the wood fire's brightly blazes, you'll hear from us our neighbors' praises. Here they'll never grow to doubt us. We'll keep our friends always about us. And here, though storms outside may pelter, is refuge for our friends and shelter. We've one rule here, and that is to be pleasant. The folks we know are always present or very near, and though they dwell in many places, we think we're talking to their faces, and that keeps us from only seeing the faults in any human being, and checks our tongues when they go trailing into the mire of mortal failing. Flaws aren't so big when folks are near you. You don't talk mean when they can't hear you. And so no scandal here is started, because from friends we've never parted. I wanted to mention a little bit about that, because I like this part where it said we're trying to be cheerful and keep this home from getting tearful. And I don't know if you experienced this, but back in the, I guess, 1990s or maybe earlier, there was a trend for people to, whether they're friends, relatives, whatever, to say things in your dear home that would upset everybody, that would very critical, or talk to your children. I had people that thought they could talk to other people's children in a mean way. I mean, grown-ups trying to discipline other people's children and scold them and things like that, and put a blight on the family home, or start an argument at the dinner table. Here you're trying to be hospitable, you invite somebody over and they have a big, I guess what you would call big, decide to have a big scene somewhere. And remember, back in the 50s, we were warned against making a scene. You remember that? You remember that phrase? Don't make a scene. Remember that? And then they started to change that. The culture started to change that. People started to change that. And I remember how shook up I felt the first time someone did that in my home. I was trying to be nice to them. I was trying to do something nice. Well, I still had a little bit of the Victorian sensibility in me. And I did what the Bible said, and I said, mark those who cause division among you, and have nothing to do with them. And so some of those people didn't get invited back. I would nod and smile when I saw them, but they didn't get invited back. And I don't think they cared. These days, no one really cares about that. They can go anywhere they want to, and they don't really need to depend on personal invitations, So for a social life, they can seek it elsewhere. But I liked that. It says we're trying to be cheerful and keep this home from getting tearful. What a wonderful thing to say when someone tries to reduce your home to a place of uneasiness and maybe something that's not so pleasant, is to say, we're trying to be more cheerful here. And we don't want people to get tearful. We hold it dear. Too dear for pettiness and meanness and nasty tales of men's uncleanness. And so we don't, in the beginning he said in this poem, you don't want to hear of any scandal that's beginning. And so to discuss things like that, but people back in just a few years ago were saying if you didn't discuss these things, you were repressed and you weren't being honest and all that. But there's nothing wrong with being respectable. And it goes along with modesty too, because modesty in speech is similar to modesty in dress. If you can bear it all in your dress, you might also bear it all in your speech. So that's my lecture on that little poem. I'll try to print it out for you in the blog. And I have a couple more to read for you. And this one is called Good Enough, and it goes along with what I say about homemaking, kids. And that is, if you only do it to where it's good enough, it's not going to make you as happy. But if you do it excellently, whether someone's looking or not, it brings on a sense of importance and dignity, and also is very, very good for you and increases your good character. There's so much I want to talk to you about today. I hope I can get it all done. And a lot of things too that you need to do is memorize a few poems. We had that one, good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better best. And just little tiny poems like the little drops of water, little grains of sand make the mighty ocean of the pleasant land. And I don't know what. So the mighty minutes, humble though they be, make up the time of eternity, something like that. We had all those little poems when my children were growing up, and it encouraged them. I do have a couple more things to talk to you about, so we'll continue with the poetry. This one is called Good Enough, and it's for a young man, but I believe that you could apply this to the home. We're never as happy when we're just giving a swipe to everything just to kind of make it look like it's put together, but we're always happier when we can really do a very thorough job. Good enough. My son, beware of good enough. It isn't made of sterling stuff. It's something any man can do. It marks the many from the few. It has no merit to the eye. It's something any man can buy. Its name is but a sham and bluff, for it is never good enough. With good enough, the shirkers stop in every factory and shop. With good enough, the failures rest and lose to men who give their best. With good enough, the car breaks down and men fall short on high renown. My son, remember and be wise. In good enough, disaster lies. With good enough, have ships been wrecked, the forward march of armies checked, great buildings burned, and fortunes lost. Nor can the world compete the cost in life and money it has paid, because at good enough men stayed. Who stops at good enough shall find success have left him far behind. There is no good enough that's short of what you can do and what you ought. The flaw which may escape the eye and temporarily get by shall weaken underneath the strain and wreck the ship or car or train. For this is true of men and stuff. Only the best is good enough. Oh, ladies, if you could just get that into your heart. You know, I watched one of these things on YouTube called A Short, and it was this pilot that he said that he had been cleared to take this commercial plane to take off, and he had a lot of passengers on it, and it had been cleared, but he didn't feel quite right about a couple of things. It wasn't quite, some things were not quite up to standard, but he had been given clearance anyway, and he said, I just, personally, my own standards are a little higher, and I don't feel quite comfortable doing that. I don't want to get up in the air and find that something else goes wrong or whatever. So he said, I'm just going to ask you all to debark the plane, and we'll make other arrangements for you, and you can catch a different flight. But he says, I just don't think this plane is good enough. And so a lot of people were commenting on that. I always love comments better than anything. People are so funny and smart. And one of the first comments was, that's the pilot I want when I'm on a flight. You know, the one that really cares about his people more than about his job. And so, yes, good enough. And I want my home to be good enough, and also my attitude to be better than good enough, you know. And well, it's just a wonderful poem. Let me see. I want to read another one here. You know, poetry is so good for you. It's so good for your brain. It's so good for your heart. Learn to read it properly. When there's not a comma at the end of a sentence, even though a new line starts, you don't pause. And that way you get the whole thought in there, kids. And so I want to read this one. It's called My Goals. And this goes along with why I didn't make New Year's resolutions. I just don't want to. Now, I did read somebody talking about a New Year's resolutions that she had actually done them. And one was that she had joined a weight loss program and lost weight. Well, yes, some of those things, you know, like you join an art class and you finish it. Classes and things and teachers and like that you pay for obligate you to go to them and finish them. Many of us are on our own. We have to be self-motivated. Very difficult. And especially we women at home. Sometimes we feel we need just a little more rest and we can't do that thing on our list that we thought we could do. You don't know. You know, Jesus said, you know not what will be on the morrow. Sufficient for the day is the worry for the day. And I always understand that I make a list, but I say, if the Lord wills. And the creek don't rise, they say. Okay, so here we go. It's called My Goals. Now, these poems were written between, I think I'm thinking probably 1928 to 1950 or 1949 or something like that. I'm not sure. My goals. A little braver when the skies are gray. You know, if the skies are gray and you're having a dull day, you're just going to make it worse if you don't do something for yourself. So put your sparkliest stuff on. I know I have this sparkly sweater that I don't have anywhere to wear it, so I just put it on and wear it. It just feels like a celebration. Put your sparkliest stuff on and be happy and have your nice cup of tea or coffee, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. A little braver when the skies are gray, a little stronger when the road seems long, a little more of patience through the day, and not so quick to magnify a wrong, a little kinder both of thought and deed, a little gentler with the old and weak, swifter to sense another's pressing need, and not so fast the hurtful phrase to speak. These are my goals, not flung beyond my power, not dreams of glory, beautiful but vain, not the great heights where buds of genius flower, but simple splendors which I ought to gain. These I can do and be from day to day along the humble pathway where I plod, so that at last when I am called away, I need not make apologies to God. This is so beautiful because the last two poems here that I have read to you remind me of a lady that was a friend of mine, and she was from a family that I guess they got it from their family, but they were continually on the dark side of everything and the complaining side of everything. And she said she had a lot to overcome because she did not want to bring her family up that way. But anything that went wrong, instead of fixing it, they'd blame. And they blamed this and they blamed that. And she said she noticed over time that when something went wrong in her house and she asked someone to come and fix it, they would say, where's it broken? And they would find it and then they would fix it. And if they couldn't fix it, they would be right back with materials to fix it. And then she said they would say, let me know if it goes wrong and then I'll come and fix it again for free. And then she would pay them and they would leave. But they didn't spend any time blaming or complaining. And so she noticed over time that the people, it's like this last poem I read that talked about good enough. See if I can find it again. The last poem that I read that talked about good enough, that good enough is mediocre. And she said what they were doing was they knew there were a lot of other people that repaired things, and they wanted to get the business and be known as the most efficient and the most thorough and the people that got things working again, because they knew that they would get word of mouth would say, this man is really good. He does good work. He doesn't leave fingerprints all over the walls, and he doesn't make a mess, and he wipes his feet when he comes in, and then he fixes the problem. And if it doesn't work, then he'll fix it again for free. And so there's great competition for these types of jobs, and so people are anxious to do a very good job and do a better job and not be just good enough, because they're going to miss out on earning a living for their families. And this is how it works here. And she brought her children up, she homeschooled them, and she talked about how you can't do something that's just good enough. It has to be excellent if you can. Now there are some things, of course, that you have to. When my children were real little, and you're always tired when you have young children, and sometimes not feeling very well. And if they wanted to do something like sweep or vacuum, but they didn't quite get it good enough or in the corners, I was happy for that, because at least some of it was done. And so there are some things that you will have to say are good enough, because you've got to watch your time, you've got to watch your energy, and you've got to watch your money. So, and this thing about my goals, not flung beyond my power. And, this thing that they're telling young people nowadays, especially in America, is you can be anything you want to be. So they want to set their goals really, really high, and then, of course, they strive for these things in which there are probably only 2 or 3 openings in the whole country for for this position and don't ever learn to do the goals that they actually can reach. And we can reach some of these things that require character. We can learn neatness, we can learn cleanliness, we can learn kindness and goodness and helpfulness, and we can learn to be creative. And I have a new word. It's not a new word, it's an old word, but I have considered this word unhinged. You know, like someone will ask me how I'm doing today. I said I'm a bit unhinged. Well, you know what that means. A door that's off its hinges, it doesn't close as well, and it just swings back and forth and makes everybody miserable. But I have decided to be hinged. So I put some words with it that would work. Hinged. So H is happiness. You know, the scripture commands us to be happy. Isn't that interesting? Happy is the man that gets wisdom and understanding. And there's one more poem I want to read to you before I get to this word hinged. So bear with me and get a few things done. And I hope that I can stay here a whole hour. We finally got a little bit of sun. Who is your boss is the name of this poem. I work for someone else, he said. I have no chance to get ahead. At night I leave the job behind. At morn I face the same old grind. And everything I do by day just brings me to the same old pay. While I am here I cannot see the semblance of a chance for me. I asked another how he viewed the occupation he pursued. It's dull and dreary toil, said he, and brings but small reward to me. My boss gets all the profits fine that I believe are rightly mine. My life's monotonously grim because I'm forced to work for him. I stopped a third young man to ask his attitude toward his task. A cheerful smile lit up his face. I shan't be always in this place, he said, because some distant day a better job will come my way. Your boss, I asked, and answered he, I'm going to make him notice me. He pays me wages, and in turn, that money I am here to earn, but I don't work for him alone. Allegiance to myself I own. I do not do my best because it gets me favors or applause. I work for him, but I can see that actually I work for me. It looks like business good to me, the best clerk on the staff to be. If customers approve my style and like my manner and my smile, I help the firm to get the pelf. But what is more, I help myself. From one big thought I'm never free, that every day I work for me. O youth, I thought, you're bound to climb the ladder of success in time. Too many self-impose the cross of daily working for a boss, forgetting that in failing him it is their own stars that they dim. And when real service they refuse, they are the ones who really lose. Yes, you have to have a sense of I'm building my character, I'm building my skills, I'm building my dignity. And I knew a young man that when he was 16 years old, he wanted to work. This is way back in the 60s when you didn't have to stay in school till you were 18. And so he found a place in this little town that he lived in, and he went to work for the baker for a while. And then he learned what he could, and then he went to work for the auto mechanic for a while, and then he went to work for a little sales company for a while, and then he went to work on someone's boat, and he just picked up all these little jobs here and there, and that was before you see, later on, that was discouraged, to be a jack of all trades or to be a Renaissance man, where you knew how to do many different things. He even learned how to chart and how to do a blueprint of a house, and he learned how to build, he learned how to grow an orchard, because he just went around and did all these things. He was curious, he wanted to know how to do it, and you were allowed to. But then somebody started to say that you had to have a resume. I'm a poet. And so they would ask, how long you worked here and how long you worked here, and you'd proudly fill this in that you stayed a few months here and there, and then you wouldn't get a job because they said you weren't reliable and you didn't stay in all these places, and they just assumed that you were fired. And so then people were encouraged to stay in one job for years and years and years, and then they'd have a good resume with good experience, and they could go on to another job, and they were just very reliable. But in a way, it harmed people because they became one talented people. And so this poem is just lovely because this young man that I knew that worked for himself everywhere he went, he was trying to find things. Also, he settled in on some things that he was interested in and wouldn't go back to some of the ones that he didn't care for, but he knew how things worked. He knew how to lay brick. He knew all about plumbing. He knew about, and he was just going from one to another and enjoying his life and enjoying learning. Well, we ladies at home, we can do that too. And one of the things that I want to do, I won't say this year, I will say one of the hours of the day on my master list. On my master list is this book here, and I don't know how I got it, but it ended up in my cookbook shelf. I've asked my kids, did you give this to me? Did somebody give this to me? Where did it come from? Why is it in my bookshelf? And I don't have any indication on it. If someone gave it to me, and I certainly don't remember ordering it. Of course, you know, I'm a bit dim in that respect, but what it is breads around the world. And so I am going to make, I started with Italy, and I am going to make, I really don't even know how to pronounce this, but it's this, you see this in the grocery stores all the time. It's in a box. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I won't even start. And so I'm going to learn how to make that. Now, you do have to have special pans for some of these, and I don't want to start doing that because if I only make it once, I don't want to be stuck with a whole lot of shaped pans. So I'm going to try to do one bread from every country in this book, and I'll just put the book out as on my list as bread book. You know, I've got my master list, and it'll say bread book, and so I will use that. And now I want to share with you tea and coffee and tell you what I've been doing here. And I'll try to put the link to the lady that I like to watch on YouTube who makes her own herbs. But I have myself a Feel Better tea. And I made this by drying all the things I found on my own property that was growing for free. And even if you live in a little neighborhood house, you've got things probably you don't realize. And you can also go to the grocery store and buy a plant and put it in the ground and grow these things. So let me read the ingredients. And it really is a Feel Better tea. And I have these little tea bags, and I've noticed the grocery stores are now selling these empty tea bags in a package so you can make your own tea. Pretty amazing, isn't it? They're really very competitive now, really into the tea trend, different kinds of tea. These are just infusions, but so I want to read to you what's in my Feel Better tea. It's just wonderful. Rosemary, sage, thyme. They're all homegrown. Yarrow leaf, lemon balm, marshmallow herb, echinacea, motherwort, chamomile, and plantain. And I've dried all those patiently and put them in this little jar here. And then I wanted to tell you about a coffee that I found. This is called Four Sigmatic. I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's an organic coffee, and it's with lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. And I thought, well, I'll try it, and I put a little bit in my little cup strainer, and decided to just drink a mouthful or something. And it tasted like old-fashioned coffee used to taste. Remember when we used to make coffee in the percolator on top of the stove and on top of the fire, and it tasted nice, and there was no, I don't remember it ever being bitter. It was kind of like in the old days, that was kind of like a camp coffee or cowboy coffee, where you let it go through several times and let the minerals, kind of collect there in the coffee. But anyway, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I wanted to try it, and it was really, really good. And so I'll get a picture of that for you. And then I found Celestial Seasonings This is probiotic tea. It's a black tea. I know a lot of you don't drink caffeine. This does have caffeine in it, but absolutely delicious. Makes you feel good. And not only delicious, but it also makes you feel good. And this is probiotic tea. This is, I'm not saying everybody would drink this, but it is also a black tea. But this is nice. This is really, really nice, and I really enjoyed that. And then I have another one. I haven't been here in a while, so I've been buying one every week. And I found a Stash is an Oregon brand, and they have one called Jasmine Blossom, and it's a green tea. And I didn't care for it. It's bitter, but I went ahead and made it in a pan, and the smell, it was so beautiful for the house. I'm just going to keep it for that. I'm going to read to you a little poem here. And also, I wanted to say that we do need to talk a little bit about, the people thing. That's always kind of fun, isn't it? So I'll try to find my notes on that. But I was going to read this thing on Hinged, okay? So we're not unhinged, ladies. We'll be hinged today. Happiness for the H. I is innovation. I couldn't find very many words that would have gone with I that would have been, uplifting and positive. But to innovate means you learn to substitute something when you don't have all the things you need to do something, or you just learn to substitute something. The other day I was out on a walk and I wanted to pick up something, but I didn't have a basket or a bag with me or anything. Some people carry a little plastic bag in their pocket, so they can pick things up. Or they pick up the cans and bottles on the side of the road and they can sell them and return them, and get some money back. And I don't do that, and so I saw some things I wanted. There was a heart-shaped pebble, and there was a pine cone, and I wanted them, but they were all wet, and I didn't. So there was a big leaf, a great big leaf out there. So I picked that up, and I used it for a little bag for that. But that's innovation, is to find something that isn't there that you can use for something else. So I put innovation, learn to innovate. Not everything has to be invented already, or you don't have to use things that are man-made. You can figure things out for yourself, how to innovate. And then let me see what the next one was. It was noble, H-I-N. I'm doing hinged. Noble. If you've ever looked up the word noble, it is just fascinating. It is the elevation of character and dignity and goodness. It's not like, I know we talk about in royalty there are the nobles, but it's not the same, and it's a character quality that's noble. And that's why I say I believe that women dressing dignified and modestly is noble, and our speech has to be noble, encouraging and uplifting and edifying has to be noble. And then the G, H-I-N-G, elegant. No, G. Let me see, what did I say G was? Gentle. Yes. G was for gentle. And E was for elegant and excellent. We've talked about excellent. And D was for delight. Now, we've all heard about delight learning. That's what homeschooling is all about. I try to take the mystery away from some of you that didn't get to be homeschooled or weren't homeschool moms, that you can start being autodidactic or educate yourself. That's homeschooling. Learning from what's around you, deducting and learning from your own experience, and being leaving kids alone to look around, stare a lot, and observe life. And it's a gentle way of learning. A gentle, non-judgmental way of learning. Beautiful, beautiful. And educate yourself so that you can see what you missed out on. I thought I had another poem for you. This is Poetry Day, kids. This is an old thing that I found back in the 1960s, and it was apparently written by someone in the military, or someone, I don't quite know the history among it, but when it was first read from a pulpit by a preacher where I attended church back in the 1960s in Tasmania, Australia. Actually, it was Hobart. And he read this poem, and I liked it so much. And I was only 16 years old, and he had explained that it was written by a man who had these great ambitions in life, and he was either in the military or he was goodness, I'll have to look it up for you. But I want to read it to you because it's amazing, and even a young person could understand it. You've probably heard it before. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything that I had hoped for. Almost, despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. And there was a part in here that just reminded me, I was given poverty that I might be wise. I really think that on Pinterest, you know, they've got Grandma Chick, and they've got Cottagecore, and they've got Shabby Chic and all that. They ought to have Poverty Chick. That's a lot of fun. As your blankets get thinner and have holes in them, you display them because of the history. And Poverty Chick, some of the things, we used to sew little patches on our clothes to cover a hole, you know, and I think they just ought to create Poverty Chick. Well, I'll just do it myself, okay? You might go over there and see that I have a board called Poverty Chick. So 7 things you will never regret. Now, this is an old church bulletin, and our grandmothers used to save these things and do little clippings and cut them out, and they had scrapbooks that they would tape them in, or else the plastic pages that pulled open, and they would stick them in with the sticky backing. 7 things you never regret. Showing kindness to an aged person, destroying a letter written in anger, offering the apology that saves a friendship, stopping a scandal that was wrecking a reputation, helping a boy find himself, taking time to show your mother consideration, accepting the judgment of God on any question. After all, it is not what we have, but what we are that makes us really happy. So, ladies, it's about time for me to quit. I'm sure that I have missed most of the stuff that I brought here to talk to you about. But I wanted to talk to you. There are a couple more things, if you'll just bear with me. You can always stop the video and start over somewhere, another part of it. You don't have to sit here and listen to all things. But I wanted to talk to you about clothing again, that we need to be careful of as we become more vital. This is really a scandal. This is more scandalous than bare arms and bare stomachs and short skirts. Let's pay attention to the crazy way that we're wearing socks and shoes, okay? I know you homeschool girls especially are really fond of socks, but really you cannot cram them into a pair of flip-flops or a pair of sandals unless you wear really ladylike socks. You can't wear these big, thick sports socks that go with Nike shoes inside of your dress shoes. And make sure your socks are clean. Now, I'm not just speaking to the young people. The vital people, too, are really bad about socks and shoes. And see, when you think of all the different kinds of shoes we have, we're going to have to start thinking about the footwear and what goes with, okay? People have stopped wearing nylons socks. Remember, we used to have the knee highs and we had the pantyhose and all that. Well, that nylon's really not good for your skin, and so we quit wearing that. Now what we have is socks. If we were in the Victorian era, it wouldn't matter what we had on our feet, because our dresses would be long enough to hide the socks, or hide, the tops, at least hide the tops of the shoes. But the way people are dressing with socks and shoes is just scandalous. And so I'll read what kind of shoes we have first. We have the flip-flops, sandals. We have the tennis shoes, the sports shoes, the flats, the heels, the boots, the slippers, the Uggs, and can I think of anything else? I don't know, the platforms, whatever. So socks and hems. I have this thing about socks and hems. Long is always better. It elongates the figure. It makes you look more graceful. It makes you look more tasteful. But my my own children had a problem with this. And that is what, and of course the elderly have a worse problem. You see the men walking around in tennis shoes, shorts, and long black socks up to their knees. And the look is just awful. And personally, I don't think men, women, or anybody really look good in shorts, because you have those knobbly knees to go with it. We don't really need to be showing off that much. We don't need to be that comfortable. But even the poorest people, I love Poverty Chick, but even the poorest people, when we were growing up in the wilderness, on the homesteads, and the rough log houses, we really, really cared about our clothing. We would wash it and press it and make sure there was no missing buttons. And if we couldn't find a button that matched, we'd just put one that didn't match, but there was a button on it. And we mended we were shown in school, in the home economic classes, how to mend little tears on the inside of your shirt or dress so that it wouldn't show on the outside that it had been mended. We were shown many different ways to preserve our clothing. And our clothing was always clean and pressed. They taught us how to turn a collar. They taught us how to scrub the stain that a neck leaves on a collar. They taught us how to take care of men's clothes. And it was just, it was something that we looked forward to, because the days were hard. Our life was hard. And the clothing made us happy and made us cheerful. And it also shows self-respect. And it's something that you can't unlearn once you've learned it. But then as time went on, we heard people saying, why do you people stress about clothes? And why don't you just relax? And why don't you just, clothing isn't important, and that sort of thing. And it goes along with that poem that good enough is not the same as excellent. We want to be excellent in all that we do. But back to the shoes and the socks. And flip-flops I don't think are good for your feet, and you can get a lot of foot injuries with your feet being that bare. And at home, ladies, you can get the cutest little short boots to wear at home, that have hard soles and that you can wear in the kitchen. There's such a danger, especially as you become more vital, that you might drop something on your foot. So wear things that cover the toes. Wear closed-toes shoes. And even a pair of little lightweight tennis shoes are better for you than wearing the flip-flops and the sandals in the kitchen, especially, and if you're doing housework. You don't have to wear ugly shoes. You can wear something really pretty that covers your heel, your ankle, your toes. The ankles are very delicate. I think it's very important to wear things that cover your feet. Like I said, it's just a scandal, isn't it? And just let me look at my list one more time. Just keep busy while you're waiting. And that is, now at home, keep up with some interests and do sometimes you can get free classes online or on YouTube. You can get free classes and just act like you're going to a class and someone is teaching you, and keep up an interest in life. I forgot to mention some of the things that I was trying to learn recently, and keep yourself healthy. And I wanted to mention to the young girls who think they're going to leave home, go to college and get a job, about your childbearing years and about your development as a young woman, that many of the things that they have the girls doing now at a young age, when they probably should be getting married and having children, they have them carrying a backpack of books on their back. When I think of it, we used to have, my dad had what's called a knapsack, and he'd carry one of the younger children in it. And my mother would too, or she'd carry it in the front. These are the years that we should have load-bearing weights that help our bone structure and help us build strong bones that should be carrying our children around. And what's really sad is that many people are sending their children into daycare where other people pick them up and carry them around. You need to stay home, pick up your own children. It's good for you. It's good for your own health. And also they have women out working where they're lifting things, to stock shelves or whatever, when they should be at home lifting their own children. And then they're pushing carts of things. Why not get a stroller and push your own children around? And they have women doing everything that they should be doing, only they've substituted it for the children. And pushing and carrying and lifting and bags of books instead of a sling with a child in it. And I understand that not everyone will have children or be able to have children, but I'm just saying in general that they are taking the young girls away from us during their most precious years, young years, maybe not all childbearing years, maybe before that, and using up their energy and using up their time so that then there's less time for them to have their families when they should be forming their families. Also wanted you to make sure you got interested in understanding herbs, because they're so beneficial for you. Even if you don't drink them in a tea, they're great for lifting the mood in the way they smell. And I'll try to put a link there of someone I know of online. Also want to emphasize that gratitude keeps the mind and body healthy. If you let your thoughts sink into the current terror in your own life or the current terror in the world, it also restricts your body parts and depresses them in so many ways. And it affects your breathing, and you really don't thrive. So be very, very careful to have a gratitude of mind, even if it's the tiniest thing. Even if all you do is thank God that you're breathing or thank God that you woke up. So good for you. So ladies, I hope this has been in some way beneficial. And I'm so glad to be back. I'm not going to make a New Year's resolution to come here every day. I'm just going to put it on my master list and decide by the hour. And so I hope you have a pleasant day. And I love you. Stay close to Christ. See you again. Bye.